You need a Grimper Brothers
just
link.
to.
Just
I mean, we
Yeah.
have that, but I can't
pre-planned commercial.
I can't like stop the live stream and then throw up a
That'd be
spot for
sick.
one of our sponsors. But we're back on, so now we're gonna see
All
if we
right.
have any more warnings pop up.
Did it
Um,
work? Are we live again?
yes, we are, and I
Okay.
didn't do
Hey,
any
everyone, we're back.
I didn't do any of the lead in, but yeah. So something going on with technology out in the inner sphere net world. Matrix place, but hopefully we're back to being good now, and hopefully things are interneting again.
Good. So Terry, you were saying it is important for all of us to look at everyone else's lived experiences, and the last year has really taught that. But let's be very clear. Like there has been in the past, and granted, this stuff has been bubbling through these legislatures for months now.
Yeah.
But very much, I believe right now, 32 states have pending legislation, and one of them has already passed all that legislation. 33 states altogether have very stringent and vehement and, frankly, for lack of a better term, disturbing anti-trans legislation happening, or getting ready to be voted on, or being passed, or having been passed. And that is kind of the landscape we're in. And we're seeing that affect the little microcosm of the world that we have that's called cycling, right?
Yeah, and I think that let's be honest and say this: if you are somebody who is living the trans experience in America, or truthfully in the English-speaking world, these are things that they're on your radar on the daily, right? Especially if you're online. This is the stuff that we have all been like canary in the coal mine, warning about for the last several years. And now it has come to fruition in American politics. And just because of happenstance, it happens to really hit the cycling world right now, because this is where the 2022 Cyclocross World Championships have been scheduled to take place.
It's a rough Venn diagram, because you have the burgeoning Bentonville, Fayetteville community that's invested millions of dollars in bike infrastructure, Walton family money. We have a World Cup coming to Arkansas. We have, to your point, the World Championships coming for cyclocross. Like it's oof.
It's all happening at one time.
Yes.
And it's and yeah, like, to be really honest, yes, I actually do. I want to go to Bentonville and ride bikes. Yeah, like the trails look pretty sick.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I've been there, and I can tell you they are pretty sick. Like, that's not a lie. That's a thing. It's a fact. Yeah. That's okay.
But at the same time, like, let's also talk about the fact that it's not just anti-trans legislation in Arkansas, at least. It's also LGBTQ healthcare legislation, and the fact that I can potentially be denied healthcare if I have an accident when I'm in Arkansas, or I get sick while I'm in Arkansas. So it's not just about trans stuff and trans rights. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who either are listening today, or friends of people who are listening, and say, well, I don't know any trans people. This doesn't affect me. And to Rob from USA Cycling's point, we don't have any trans people who this affects. Like, actually, yeah, you do. You have any of your fans who are going to come there, potentially your staff, potentially, your fans, friends, and relatives, etc., or staff of teams, or anybody who might be there who this does affect. And it doesn't just have to affect trans people racing bikes. This could also be a healthcare thing. And do I want to be necessarily like at the hospital as somebody who's extremely crash prone? And Doug, I'm sure you know exactly where I'm coming from here.
Yes, I do. Yep.
Do I want to put it in somebody else's hands to determine, is this an emergency situation or not, because I'm too queer for them to be giving medical services to? And no, I really don't. So you know what? I will I will skip. I do not need to be in Arkansas, and on top of that, any of the other legislation down there that does affect specifically trans youth and trans athlete competition when they're at the scholastic or collegiate level, and those are things that I personally find, that I'm morally opposed to, that I find reprehensible.
And I think this is where it's important to state a couple pieces in terms of like boundaries for us in this discussion. Is one, none of us are going to talk about this from a political sphere. This isn't red versus blue. This isn't that. We're talking about humans. And again, I will point to Pink Blue White podcast. Go listen to the first episode and just hear those experiences and give yourself that opportunity to hear what those experiences are like. We're not asking you to do anything more than that, other than to just 2 ears, 1 mouth for a little bit. I think it's also important to try and as much as possible, because we have this long format, continue to kind of stay on grounds of how are we gonna attack this, and state specifically what's going on. And you did a great job of outlining what has specifically been passed. Since Arkansas, Kansas, West Virginia's getting ready to pass one, Ohio has one on the governor's desk. So it's happening. It's happening in a lot of states.
Everywhere.
It's happening everywhere. So it is. Again, this is where it's. I immediately want to go into some sort of political conversation, but that's not what this is.
I also want to be like very explicitly clear, and this is something that I probably have done myself, and I need to kind of to reinforce this to myself, that it's very easy to say, oh, this is the southern states. No, this is not the southern state. Like, Idaho is not a southern state. Yeah, Connecticut, which is just north of me, is not by any means a southern state.
No.
Maine, not a southern state. And these are places where this legislation, Connecticut is where it kicked off. Idaho is where the Hecox case was. And Maine is another place where these things, does it have a chance of passing? Probably not, but it is live and in effect there.
So let's go back a little bit, and as you stated, this has been something that you have been and thousands of others have been saying for a while. Like, this is what we're heading towards. This is what we're heading towards. This is what we're heading towards. So, to get some of the background story on where this came from, because it didn't come out of left field. None of these things came out of left field. These are the type of topics that politicians kind of hold until they have the ability to go get the media for it and go drive a bunch of conversation about it. It's one of those like third drawer things with the red folder that you pull out when you're ready to take the conversation for the next 2 months. So can you kind of give us some groundwork on where did all of this come from and where did it originate, and how long has this process been going to get us to the point where we're at now?
Yeah, so a lot of these, the genesis for some of these laws, or at least the germination for some of this stuff that's happening now, it's going back 5, 6, 7 years ago in a lot of instances. And I think the first thing that it really came onto anybody's radar here in America was in relation to the bathroom bill in North Carolina. And we saw how that all played out, right? Like, I think some of us, it's kind of like this distant memory of these things that happened in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But that was only 2015, 2016. That wasn't all that long ago, actually. But there was a retreat after that, and a lot of folks, at least on the right, said, "Oh, wait a second, maybe we didn't attack that in the correct way. We didn't get enough buy-in from the groups of people that we wanted to have there, because there turned out to be a whole heck of a lot of support for the trans community, and people, organizations like the NCAA saying, no, we're not going to hold our events in North Carolina, and major corporations saying, yeah, we're not going to send our employees to North Carolina or have our fancy golf outings there, or things like that, made a lot of people think about the economic consequences of doing business in North Carolina, and thus they retreated from that position. However, whilst they may have retreated from that as a public sort of position, there was a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And again, as anybody who's within the trans or queer community knows, like living the 4 years during the Donald Trump presidency was a really hard time, because there were these continual, just almost week after week, if not month after month, little jabs towards the trans community, the queer community, and in little tiny ways, whether it was trans service ban, retracting the right to serve openly in the military, and other religious exemptions for healthcare and stuff like that. There were these little things. However, simultaneously across the pond, in the UK, there was a lot of groundswell growing, because of it was being fomented by people on the religious right in the US, who were pumping dollars into figuring out how they were going to get these organizations off the ground, and how they were going to build the base and stoke fear in folks. And then once they lost the presidential election, this is amongst the things that they just decided they were going to ramp up and ramp through state legislatures across the country. And every time we talk about, hey, politics are local. Yes, politics are extremely local, because these things matter on a local level in the US. And because they found that bathroom bills didn't resonate with people, but sports bills did. Kids did. And when you look at it from that point of view, and you start to see how these things are built up on the political side, yes, they went after sports because they had they had the polling behind it. They had Save the Children type stuff behind it on the healthcare side, and they just went for it. And when you have control of state houses, you have control of governorships, and you have control of judges, these are things that you're able to do.
And I think this is another point where it's I think important to interject, as as somebody who grew up in kind of rural Northwest Ohio, the idea, not necessarily that you're not aggressively preying on naivete or ignorance, and not in like the negative people are dumb way, but understanding that shared experience. Again, this is where it comes down to, this is why the podcast that you're putting together is so important, because there's nowhere really to go to hear and to expose yourself to those shared experiences from LGBTQ folks. So if you don't have any exposure to that, and you're in the heart of the SEC, and you're talking about sports, and you're talking about this guy is going to come take all the medals away from your daughters, or you're talking about how this is predatory towards kids, and there is no base understanding of what that lived experience is, it becomes really, really fertile ground to push it. And that's where I think it's important for what you said of, they had the polling to back this as the specific wedge issue that they went after.
Yes.
So for anyone that's thinking like this came out of some wild ass, state legislator in Arkansas had this idea and he pitched it and everybody glommed onto it. No, this is crafted, directed, sniper rifle. It has been tested. It's been phone banked, all of these things to make 100%. Sure that it is the perfect wedge issue.
Yeah.
To drive this conversation.
And also, none of these issues come from any sort of statistical or factual based situation where there are a whole bunch of people or youth transitioning to go kick ass at sports. It's not happening.
No.
There's not a bunch of like big burly dudes who are like, I really want an Olympic medal, and what I'm going to do is transition just to get it. That is a fallacy. It is a lie that is manufactured. There's a case in Connecticut.
No, and even those kids,
that person's not going to go D1. Sorry.
No, and even those kids, right? Like, they ran fast at some races, but generally speaking, they're literally just like any other girls who were out running a race. And statistically speaking, no, trans women are not in any sort of advantage. The advantage I'm sure people say there's a perceived advantage. Okay, you can have perception, but perception is not reality. And sure, folks, go look at my cross results, and I can tell you that there is no advantage from this particular trans athlete.
And if they don't believe your cross results, they can talk to Adam Meyerson and talk about your training plan and what you did to get.
I mean, as Adam and I have joked before, I quite literally anti-dope, you know, and that's it's kind of one of the funny things. Like yes, and it is driven out of fear, right? But instead of addressing the very real issues in women's sport of inequity to, you know, let's drill down. Let's specifically talk about cycling, right? Like instead of talking about the inequities of start times or prize purses or field sizes or
pit selection.
The fact that, you know, a major women's team over in Europe has, you know, problems with,
harassment,
actual harassment and pedophilia, right? Like these are things that are real, but they deflect and they want to talk about other topics. And it's funny. It's not funny, haha. It's just funny, weird that we talk about these things over and over, to the fact that I can kind of rattle them off because I've had to talk about them so many times. And I'm not the only person. Like so many of my cis friends who race bikes, they're now at the point where they can rattle them off because they're so used to having to unfortunately talk about them time and time again, quite oftentimes to these very same people.
Yeah. So I think this brings us to this space. I think this sets the table for us to understand where we're at and the challenges, right? We're seeing, the denying of trans youth healthcare. We're seeing the denial of trans youth to participate in sports with the gender that they identify with. We're seeing those things start to crop up. Like I said, 33 states. This is crazy. It's everywhere. It's going to come for all of us. And we need to be active to protect the most vulnerable among us. But through that, there has been some opportunity for different people to have response. So let's talk a little bit about the response, right? This, whether people were paying attention to it or not. And, you know, I will freely admit that I wasn't paying attention to it as much as I should have been. And for that, I am like forever repentant, but I will pay more attention. Right. But whether people were paying attention or not, people are paying attention now. Let's start at a top level and let's not get into specifics. How do you feel the response has been within cycling on the whole to this situation? And then I want to drill down into some specific responses. So as a trans person who is directly affected by this, right? And, you know, is intimately tied to this issue, how do you feel the response has been through the cycling industry in general?
Okay, so you said the cycling industry. So I'm going to break this down into three buckets here. The first I'll say is from the cycling industry. The second will be from the federations, and the third will be from the racing community.
This is perfect. This is exactly how I'd like you to break this down. It's almost like we talked about it, but
we actually didn't talk about that one. Yeah. Perfect. So the first I'm going to say, let's start with the best and let's work our way backwards here, is the cycling community has been extremely amazing right now. The bicycle racing community, very specifically, like let's break down the breakdown there and say the bicycle racing community has stood up, and it's not the trans folks who are having to stand up and do all the yelling and screaming for once here, right? There are voices within the bicycle racing community, very specifically within the cyclocross racing community, who have been ardent, steadfast, vocal supporters of what's happening and the rights of of trans folks, the rights of queer folks when it comes to riding and racing, and very particular to the issue of should we be racing bikes this year or next year in Arkansas on a World Cup or a World Championship level. And yes, I'm going to give some shout outs here because I think those people do deserve proper attention, right? Like, yes, Adam Myerson and what Adam has done of being extremely vocal and extremely, I don't know how to exactly say this, but reasoned responses to stuff. The second has been Randy Locklear, right? Runway 4. Randy, and through his position, not through his position with the CRCA, but because he is such a good way of pulling together the thoughts and expressing them in a way that, oh my gosh, I wish I had the way to the superpowers that Randy.
If I could have half of the ability he has to communicate, I would be president.
100%. Chris Stefano is another one. James Wong or Kaylee at Cycling Tips. They've been other ones, right? So the cycling community in that sense has been amazing. And then on top of that, every single, particularly the cis women who have been in on these calls and just, I'm going to say raising hell, right? Like there has been support and outpouring of love for the trans community that I have not seen in my 4 years of being out as trans within this community.
So Tara, how does that make you feel?
Oh, we're going to talk about these USAC inclusion calls? That makes
no. I want to get to those, but how does it make you feel?
It actually makes me feel welcome. It makes me feel like I am part of this community. It makes me feel like all the rabble rousing that I may have done over the past 4 years, 5 years hasn't been for naught. Like people have actually been listening and they've been taking notes and now they're taking action. And I think that goes a long way, right? Like it's showing me that there's support out there, and there's support from other areas too. It's not just the people who are actively involved in racing bikes. It's not just the NEMBAs or the CRCAs with their just awesomely beautiful statements. If you haven't read the CRCA statement or JD Bilodeau's statement, like, they are absolutely exquisite.
F-kiss.
Yes, but there's other areas too, right? Like when I look and see the folks who are outside the racing circles, and you look at heck, even the attention shown from like defund bike police and what they're throwing on this, like or outside this loop and they're throwing on it. Yeah, Peter, exactly.
Who's not like in the bike racing scene, but is in the bike like don't run me over on the road scene.
Yeah. So I think I'm not going to say it's unanimous, but the tide is in our favor, right? So that's number one. That's the number one bucket. Number two bucket is the federations. The federation's responses have been at best lackluster.
All right.
So
I think John has a
yeah.
So there's something I think that's important to state in this, that again, setting the table, as it were, that when we got off the call with Rob DeMartini and we had kind of our debrief with him after his recording, and then Doug and I specifically, for the first time in a couple years, we felt as though we had somebody with solid direction, because he said the right things and he instilled us with tepid confidence, I guess is the best way to describe it, that we felt like there was a chance.
That's a great phrase.
But we're also, because of experience after experience after experience with USAC and kind of the national governing body just as a whole, and some specific events within that, still like I'm going to keep my cards close to my chest. But with that being said, I think in terms of the response, national governing bodies and UCI should be looking at the way that we as cyclists and bike racers are responding to our own. We are all rallying together and protecting our herd as a group. So the response is, I don't think this is an opportunity to go in and start throwing flames, because it's not constructive. And I think it's important to at least say what has been said. But I think it's important to underpin what I'm about to read with the idea that the people in cycling, whether they are bike racers or they're just commuters or they are just people that love bikes, have come to the aid and come to the fore to stand up for their fellow cyclist as job one. And this is where it is disappointing to read things such as this article from Single Tracks, which has become heated in so many different ways and probably misinterpreted in so many different ways, and then backed up very poorly, in my opinion, from a PR perspective from USA Cycling. But regardless, this is what Rob DiMartini said to USA Cycling in response to the Arkansas legislation. It says, quote, "I just don't see where this goes, particularly when the law is in front of 20 different states." We obviously note that's more than that now. "I think we need to be a part of the dialogue, which in my mind means to participate. It would be different if our athletes were going to be affected, but we don't believe they will be. There's a question around collegiate athletes if they're racing for their school. What we'll probably do is take out any team competition whatsoever and just let them race as individuals. That way we don't feel like they're in violation of the law. I know that for some that's not enough. They want to see, quote, USAC not send a team and not support the event. The Walmart Foundation is based in Arkansas. It's worth $250 billion. They're very close to the governor, and they are against this bill and couldn't stop it. So I'm not sure that a boycott by USA Cycling is anything more than ceremonial. I don't mean to discount the point of view for a trans athlete. That ceremony may be worth it to them. I am just not sold on that." So, as you are surrounded by your fellow cyclists in solidarity and support of you, why does that statement from the leader of your national governing body ring hollow to you? Why does that ring hollow to you, Tara?
He said the thing that I think a lot of folks expect. He said the quiet part out loud. God. And he didn't have the presence to actually reflect on what does some of this mean to not just the trans athletes, but the entire community, to your point, that you were saying. But he also, at that time at least, hadn't actually reached out to the trans community, and he hadn't tried to actively engage with the community in understanding why this was of importance, why this was beyond ceremony, right? Like, I don't like to think that my life is merely ceremony. I don't like to think that the lives of any of my friends are ceremony. And that felt just extremely dollars and cents and inhuman and just tone deaf. And as I've said before, right, and I've said this directly to USAC on calls. Heck, I said it on a call to USAC today. If you don't want to be part of this issue, just stop playing around. Just lay it out there. And to be honest, that was the first time in 4 years that I've heard that emotion just laid out so smooth and so just on the table from USAC. And if that's the way he wants it to be, okay. Well, you know what? If that's your flag and you're going to rally behind it, okay. That's you made that mess and prepare to sleep in it.
Because there is an important piece, going back to our chat with him, that he challenged me because I kept coming at him with show me numbers, and he started to try and make fun of me for it, which I think is kind of BS in a sense, because I was asking for accountability from somebody that I've given a lot of money to over the last decade. But he also said, I want you to hold me accountable to these things, to all of these things, to the direction of the governing body. So, to that point, I think this is where it's like, okay, this is what's said. This is how it made you feel. Pretty sure that we're talking to a human right now. So the fact that somebody can just so blithely say, so blithely just write off, even if it is a single person as a USAC member, the fact that you are willing to say something so plain as day that this is not worth it for us, that this money is not able to move this mountain, so why should we get involved? The idea that somehow making any sort of stance, sitting, go to the back of the bus, it's just a ceremonial move. It won't change anything. It's piling those things up. How do we start to move? How do we start to take that frustration and that anger that is the little ball of energy from Street Fighter in front of my chest right now? How do we Hadouken that out into the world and do something with it and do something constructive? Again, underpinning that you have a lot of support. The person in charge of the NGB said, I want you to hold me accountable. What do we start to do? How do we start to build a game plan to go after this as a group? Because I think a lot of people right now have that ball of energy and that ball of frustration, and they want to do something with it, and they don't know what to do with it. And I think a lot of folks are waiting for, what's my target? What do I got to go hit?
Yeah, and I think that there. Oh, go ahead.
One thing I think that has to be acknowledged that they haven't done yet before we do deliverables is how much this hurts. There has been no legit this hurt people.
No, it's been from a PR perspective, it's been business as usual for them, going back to
we got to start there,
brands,
right?
and
we can put a plan together, and I want to hear your plan, Tara, because I think this is important. But I'm sitting here choking back tears because I think about you and I think about the people that I know in the LGBT community that I am holding solidarity with, and I think about how much this hurts to hear. And that hasn't been acknowledged, and that makes me upset. So we got to start there. So,
yeah, and for me, it's almost like I think myself, and I think there's a lot of trans folks who can also attest to this, right? We have our skin is made in Nomex or turtle armor, or however you want to say it.
Nomex is great.
Yeah, we're kind of used to this to a point.
But that in itself just underscores how broken all of this is, because correct. You guys have developed that weathered, thick outer skin.
But the other thing too is that I think a lot of that skin that you develop, it doesn't materialize until after you tend to come out. And I think that what they're not realizing is that for every one of me or the Molly Camerons who are jumping up and down, hair on fire, screaming, yelling right now, there are 5, 10, 50, 100, 1,000 other trans folks who are on that bubble of perhaps coming out. And I have talked to quite literally dozens of them over the last few years. We call them eggs inside the trans community, right? I'm just going to give you I've talked to so many eggs who are ready to hatch. And I can guarantee you that those folks they're going back into the back of the closet. They're going with those old tennis shoes that you haven't worn in 5 years. They're going back behind the suit that they haven't worn since graduation into the closet. because they're looking around going, okay, some of these people are there for me, but the org isn't there for me. The brands aren't there for me. Very little of the athletes, the professional athletes, are there for me. Like, why am I going to do this? And the reason I know that is because I was that person. I was that person, 15 years ago when Michelle Dumaresque was out, and I watched Michelle Dumaresque get heckled off a stage. I watched Michelle Dumaresque get just blown apart in the media for being a trans athlete before it was a thing, like decades before it was a thing. And that had a real impact. That had a lasting physical and emotional impact on me. And I think that's why these things matter. And no, do I expect that a Rob or a Kelsey from USAC is going to intrinsically know those things? No, I don't. But I want them to listen and say,
bingo,
I hear you, and I want to listen to these perspectives and these stories, because this is the stuff that matters, not just here and now, but next year, the year after, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now.
So let's clarify that a little bit, because that's a little bit of an ambiguous statement to say, I want you to listen to me. Listen. Just listen to me. I think it gets overused. It's the first line of defense in any sort of argument with somebody that you care about. But I think
marital arguments.
Yeah, right. And it immediately,
why don't you listen to me?
And it just immediately pours gasoline on an already existing flame. But for this specific situation, because I know you've had back and forth with them, and I know it's been delivery. Well, what do you want us to do? Additional delivery. Well, what do you want us? And it's not the connections aren't being made between the two. So I think it's important to try and just define what I want you to listen to me. What does that mean for you and for this specific discussion?
I will very clearly articulate what are the topics that myself and I'm going to say a large part of the community, the trans folks and our cis allies are asking for. The very first thing, I want accountability from the board of USAC. I want Rob to resign. At this point, I'm seeing ineffectual leadership. I think
I think you could make the argument right now that it's not ineffective, it's destructive, and it's dangerous.
Yes. It is. And I think that without harping on it too much, I think that he has overstayed his welcome at this point by now, at least 10 days. He needs to step aside so that progress can be made. At this point, progress can't be made because Rob needs to step aside. Second to that is we need to focus on the big target, which is relocation of Cyclocross World Cup, other prestigious events, that are happening in the US out of affected states. We need to first tackle the problem of Cyclocross Worlds, because that is the biggest problem as far as from a marquee events, right? Like we need to address, this is the elephant in the room. Let's address it. The third thing is, yes, and this goes to the part of number 2, we need an action plan for the other states. To your point, there are 33 other states. There are probably 20 of them where the legislation is realistically going to pass, including places like Tennessee, where road national championships are, West Virginia, where a UCI mountain bike World Cup finals is going to be in September. We need to then look at those places and say,
North Carolina, where, I don't know, Brevard and all of Asheville is, where it's like mountain biking hotbed. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, we need to look at these other affected regions and say, okay, what's the action plan to move out of these places and to states that have, if not legislation on the books where there are protections, but at least where they're not actively going after the trans and queer community. The next one is to actively pursue and pay LGBTQ, BIPOC advisors, staff, creators, because I think that they need to, yes, they have a diversity task force. They pay some of the folks in the diversity task force, but it's very clearly not like really taking hold here. And if they want to represent the community, they want to also show a big old, FU in some ways to those other places. Okay, let's develop that talent. Let's develop the media. Let's develop the PR. Let's develop the officiating, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to sustain these events, not just now, but in the future going forward. And then the final thing, and this is maybe the first thing as well, is don't work against us, work with us. Like, we are actually, as a community of trans folks, queer folks, and allies, we are here to help you, and we want to help you. We are pleading to help you because we love this sport. We love this activity. We love cycling to such a degree that we don't want to see you continue to self-harm.
Yeah.
USA Cycling.
I remember, and I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but I remember when we were on the first USAC call, I was like, look, I want to be proud of my national governing body. And that's the thing that John has told me a million times, because that's how he feels. And I agree with him. Like, I want to be proud of USAC. I want to be proud of UCI. I want to be like, I want you to give water bottles to kids.
Yeah.
It's
like if I'm going to invest so much emotion in this sport and want to follow racing, and want to create my own heroes and create these super athletes and follow the stories and things like that, I want to feel like I'm putting my chips in something that matters. And I mean, the UCI is a tough one. Because it's so it's so disconnected.
Like, come on, we don't have that. We're gonna,
as silly as it is, I want to be proud to fly my flag at my American flag at bike races and support my team.
Yeah.
And to your point, Tara, like, I love the idea of looking at USAC as not just athletic talent development, of public relations talent development, of media talent development, of content creation talent development, to put things into this industry that are so desperately needed to make it more dynamic and to be able to put it in front of more folks that can really put it on display as to, this is why it's awesome, not investing the majority of the budget trying to go get Olympic medals, which it's valid in and of itself. But if you have limited resources, we got to start to figure out where to really invest that time. And clearly we have a culture issue, and we have a problem telling the story, because from a national governing body, and as people that have donated to it, we're all part of this. We, as paying members, are like kind of in charge of fixing this problem and demanding the fixes to be put in place, and
demanding accountability.
And I just go back to that just disappointment of, man, you guys can't even make a post about Zwift correctly. So how can we expect you to be leaders, let alone thought leaders, on a complex, nuanced topic that we're all trying to navigate together, when you can't even get these? It's one of those things where how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? If you can't cross the T's and dot the I's and on that stuff, how the hell are we going to trust you to do it at this level?
Well, that's what we're seeing on the ground, right? Like we as USAC members, and some of us are closer to it, either for a length of time or because we are closer to it from our job or whatever.
Sure.
To others, but when I step back and I look at it, is the reason that these things are happening is because it's just modeled behavior internally. They're not seeing the CEO, Rob, they're not seeing the board actively say, this is a target, we need to go after it. Rob knows these things from a business perspective. He very successfully ran a high profile company in the sporting goods industry. He's not stupid. Like, I'm not at all ever going to say that. He knows how to make money. He can have that influence upon his staff and his coworkers. When you see how little they seem to care about those details around the edge, you kind of have this, you know, it flows from the top and it comes down.
Yeah.
And that goes back to kind of my point of like the first thing, you know, on kind of my list of demands, or it's not really demands, it's more of like a actionable items to-do list, is it's not a personal axe to grind, I don't think, at least against Rob. It's like, Rob, you've worn out your welcome now, and you're detracting from the conversation. And I think as a group and as a sport, you need to step aside. And I think that will actually have a really positive influence across the organization and will help them to perform better.
And from the right person,
right, and from a positioning perspective, there's a point where no matter what you do, no matter how much goodwill you fix and you go make things right, you're not going to win some people back. And Rob has put himself in such a box when it comes to that to make expedience moving forward, that's the only. It's going to take 10 years for him to regain any sort of trust within the cycling industry if he's working at it every day. And that's not what is required right now at that position. We need somebody right now that we can lean on, and he can model the correct behavior for
I'm available.
Everyone externally, but also, to your point, Tara, that internal piece of leadership is very, very rarely what you say from like a true leadership perspective. It's how you carry yourself and the things that you do and the positions that you put yourself in and the positions that you put all of your team in to go be successful at what they're doing. And it's just that there's such a huge pile of things that are working against him, self-inflicted and otherwise right now, that it's just for the better of the sport, for the better of the governing body. That's kind of the only option that's left.
Yeah, and of course, like I honestly, I don't. It's like I don't want to harp on these things, right? It's because there are really actionable things that I think we all need to be doing, right?
Sure.
It is talking about the fact of if okay, can this event be moved? I want to realistically know, can it be moved? Yeah, and what does it take to move the event? I don't want to just hear like, no, I can't do this because Walmart has $250 million or $250 billion or whatever it was. Like, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear, how much does it cost to move the event? Okay, we have this day lockdown. We seem to be able to move really prestigious events right now, kind of on the fly. Okay, and I realize this is America, this is not Belgium, but we can do these things. The UCI has kind of given tacit approval to do this. Let's figure out how to get it done. If we can't do it, at least we need to know what are the obstacles in our way. If we can't do that, okay, how do we move Road Nats? How do we move the other World Cup? How do we take those learning experiences so that we're not just sitting here 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, having the same podcast, having the same roundabouts on DI calls and on Twitter saying, why isn't this stuff changing?
Right. I mean, I think we saw this when COVID hit, right? There was this massive scramble of everyone figuring out what it was to navigate this new thing. And we all learned how to shut events down, shutter them for a year, move them, do them in a way that was safe for people who were trying to participate because of a national, global pandemic. some of those learnings have got to translate to us thinking about how to
and it's not, I fully realize it is not easy. Well, and there are a lot of obstacles, but we need to know what are those obstacles. Correct. What is this checklist that we need to do?
Yeah. And get that bread.
Yeah,
you can make this happen.
Because then that's a target you can go acquire. Sure. You can go raise that money, do whatever you need to do. But I think it's also important, right? Important to say these aren't meant to be ceremonial moves. They are meant to hurt that specific state. If the MLB can say, Georgia,
boop,
going to Colorado, you don't get the All-Star game anymore because we don't like your voter suppression laws. That is an incredibly complicated 2-week. And when we had it here in Cincinnati, it started in January and went all the way to the actual All-Star game and then another couple weeks afterwards. It takes over the city. It is a huge boon. So, but it also, because it's a huge boon, it's incredibly complicated. But they're just like,
a very busy couple weeks of my
life. We are actively moving this. And that's not ceremonial. And say what you will about the size of the bike industry or the fact that it's not $250 billion or whatever. I don't care. If this was racing for $10 in a cornfield that took $5 to relocate the race to another state, you relocate the damn race to another state.
Damn right.
It's bigger than just making the ceremonial point. It is hurting somebody in the pocketbook. It is hurting the state. And I think in this situation, if those bodies aren't willing to listen to the overwhelming majority of folks, then you start to have to hurt those folks as well. And that's where it's like, I want to be proud of my national governing body. I don't want to have to not want to re-up my membership with them. Like, I want to support you, but you're making it really damn hard for me to want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah, it's the very Jerry Maguire, help me help you. You know, and it's not, I guess, you know, to the point of like, I'm tired of yelling, and now I want, like, we've gone beyond the yelling part and we're into the act of doing things.
Yeah.
And I need people to say, this is what we need to do. And I think that myself and others are able to articulate, this is what we want to see done. But now we need the buy-in from the people who are actually holding the race, and is it just USAC? I don't know. Is it just Brooke? I don't know. Is it just the UCI? I don't know. Like, we need to know these things. And the UCI right now, USA Cycling right now is seemingly the focal point of that.
Yeah.
Okay. If we are misdirecting our fire, USA Cycling, please tell us. Work with us to direct that fire in the correct line, because we're here to do this together.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that makes sense. This should be a concerted effort. If you support trying to protect your athletes in a larger sense, point us in the direction that we need to go, and we will all row towards that lighthouse, right?
Yes.
There are a lot of people that are very, very passionate and are willing to put time and effort in.
And money.
Just need to be pointed in the correct direction and not just be spending a bunch of our time pointing ourselves at the wrong direction for no apparent reason.
Yeah. And I think even beyond that is, okay, if building any sort of project Gantt chart, right? You have your parallel paths.
God, here we go. You have your project managers on the same call.
You have your this is if everything goes perfect, we move it to X state. And we have it on, we move the World Cup, we move World Championships, we move downhill if West Virginia continues on the path that it's going on, we move road nats, we figure out where we can give economic boon to the states that are willing to treat humans as humans. It's crazy that we're 2021 and we're still talking like that, but here we are. But I think secondarily is, okay, plan for the inevitable that white dudes are going to white dude, and nothing's going to change, and everyone's going to say it's all too complicated, the die is cast, yada, yada, yada. We're, think about all the work that's been done to do this, and think about all of donating your time to these things, or whatever Brooke said in his response. So then what? If none of that moves, what does phase 1A look like this? What does the parallel path of, if we can't relocate it, then what?
Well, then that's what we need to focus our time and efforts on. after we find out after we find out that we can't do step one, right? Like, I don't want to concede defeat before we even have gotten down that road, because I do think that there are going to be solid learnings even if we can't relocate that event. There are going to be very solid learnings out of project planning and organizationally about, okay, so we all learned we couldn't do that one, but now we know how to apply it to these other 3 events or something like that. Are there, but then we can dig in and say, okay, these are actionable items that we can take on the ground to address these topics. And is it organizing other grassroots activism at the State House? Yeah. Is it organizing sit-ins? Is it organizing
there's
donations? There are 100 or 1,000 potential other things that we can talk about, but let's focus first on the first big thing. And if we can't get to that big thing, then we can step back to the fallback, because those things, quite honestly, they don't take 9 months to figure out. They might take 9 weeks or 9 days to figure out.
And this is where, anybody who's been around any length of time, what happened the last time that the United States held world championships? Oh, yeah, that's right. We completely moved everything to Saturday because Sunday was going to flood. And they did that Friday, the day before. They did, like, the athletes were beside themselves because they thought they were racing Sunday and they had to now race on Saturday. And that all happened within 24 hours because of the weather changes and the river getting ready to flood, to flood Derby City.
Getting deep.
But again, like, it's possible. Anything is possible. And Doug, to your point, global pandemic told us that things are way more flexible and way more pliable than everyone thinks that they really are.
Yeah, we're all way more pliable than that. And I think it's good for us to think about it in that way. And I think there's opportunity for us to actually solve this problem if everyone's rowing in the same direction. So we just need to all get on the same boat, and we need our national governing body in that space. So I want you to hit the 3rd bucket because we haven't touched it. And then after we're on the 3rd bucket, I want to knock a couple things out and we're going to roll to the MA.
Okay.
Here's the thing. 3rd bucket, brands. You haven't touched them.
Nope.
Because they ain't done shit.
They haven't. They haven't.
But actually,
no
lip service.
Well,
yeah, barely.
No, there's barely been lip service, and I will say is that a couple of media brands. So very surprising. It has been led by the media brands.
Interesting.
Who've said stuff, right? You've had Bicycling Magazine.
Yes.
Who ran an article, with Molly Cameron, right? Like very out front on the topic. And then you've also had Cycling Tips, who's been extremely out front. Like, Cycling Tips is Pink Bike, right? Like, let's not forget the weight that Pink Bike has in this cycling universe, right? Like, you have Cycling Tips behind this. This is major. And the fact that you have Hearst Media, who is bicycling, you have Pink Bike, the largest endemic, one of the largest, non-endemics, both saying, hey, we're giving this importance here. Yet you have you have the industry, by and large, you just hear crickets.
So let's dig into that, because again, going back to your first time on the show, you have almost an entire career of being endemic bike industry person.
Yes. Also, by the way, if you've not checked out the latest bicycling issue, Tara riding a bike in a double gatefold, it's beautiful. Congratulations. I saw it in the morning. It was nice.
Oh, look at that. Look at that blush. That's so cute.
Oh,
but so understanding that brand communication is very rarely hatched in the moment. It is normally very prescripted, very kind of 6 months, 9 months out. Product launches, highly organized. A lot of these things are like very, very meticulously planned. And then more often than not, as it gets closer to the end, as you start to scramble and make audibles and things like that. But why from your experience, what can you draw from the silence from the bike industry by and large? What do you draw from that silence?
It goes back to a lot of the feeling that I had 10 months ago, 11 months ago, whilst the BLM stuff was kind of happening in America, and watching bike brands sit on their hands and look the other way and kind of asking themselves, and I'm sure I got calls from different people inside brands like, what should we do? What should we say? And we're seeing the same thing happening now. And instead of, I'm not at all trying to compare one thing directly to the other, but it's more about saying that this was, everybody went and posted a black box on their Instagram and said this was a learning experience, and they set up all their internal committees and initiatives and said they're going to be more inclusive, and then they forgot about it, right?
Because this was the time, right? This is the time to walk into it. And
now is it the same thing? No, although, like, hey, let's all be honest and say, what else is happening right now? There's big shit going down in Minnesota right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to have this reckoning again as an industry. But it's again saying, where were you? Where are you now? These are easy. It should be easy things to take a stand for.
They're softballs. All of these things are softballs that you should hit
on the tee. Hit it out.
400 foot, gone. Like
gone.
It's not hard. It's not hard. But
you're a Mets fan, so like that doesn't happen often for you.
No.
But like,
hey, we got new ownership now. Things are changing.
Yeah. But at what point do you have to look at the brands, or if you're working for one of these brands, at what point do you have to look at yourself and accept the fact that silence is complicity?
Yeah.
That you're not speaking out against it means that you're tacitly approving that behavior. Knowing that you have a soapbox to stand on.
Everybody is. It's so weird to kind of. They're afraid that they're going to. I think that there's a lot of fear that they're going to get blowback on it. They're going to get pushback on it. That they're going to then have. I've actually heard people say that they don't want to make a statement on stuff because then they have to police their social media comments.
Good.
Like, excuse me? Like, that should actually be a sign that you really should be making these
and you're spending all of this time doing research trying to find who your customer is, and all of these brands are spending thousands of dollars trying to really hone and fine-tune their customer base to get it to be exactly who they want. What better time to call your customer base? Like, this is a conversation that Doug and I had last year right about this time of, do we want to take a stance and do we want to say something very aggressively about what's going on? And it was yes, because we're ready. If people don't want to hear that from us, peace.
Because you're two people who are running a podcast.
Correct.
Right? You're not
naturalized. Trek.
25 people, 100 people who are then trying to have government by committee, government by PowerPoint, and formulate an on-the-fly response. And having been inside one of the largest bicycle companies in America for almost a decade, yes, I know those things are hard to do. I also know that right now it's a little harder. You can't just physically walk into the corner office and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Please rubber stamp this. You can't actually do that. But at the same time, you can get that person on a Zoom call. You can get them on Skype or on a text message and say, hey, we have to address this. Let's do this. And the thing is that I don't think people inside the endemic cycling industry realize how much, like, there are queer people in your organization.
Yeah, there
are. I can 100% guarantee you there are queer people in your organization. There are trans people inside your organization. And if there are not, they probably have a relative, they have a friend, they have a partner. There are a lot of things that we don't talk about in the bike industry. I like to say that the bike industry is there. We're a lot of Facebook liberals, right? Like, we like to give thumbs up. We like to give fake hugs or the angry emoji at comments on Facebook or on Instagram. But then when it's time to actually step up and do something about it, everybody sits on their hands because they're afraid of what the blowback might be.
But this is right, being an egg. This is being a person who is scared of that blowback. And this is what we have to break down. This is this is so systemic in our country and the way we operate and the way we are as people. We have to break this down, because until we can break this down, people aren't going to feel okay to step through that barrier. And we have to say it's okay. And the brand that walks through this door has everything in the world to win. And I don't understand. I don't understand why, like, even if you're making a purely capitalist bullshit, not appropriate decision, the brand that walks through this door has everything to win, even if it's fake.
Yeah, but I look and I see some of the amazing work that's been done in the inclusivity side of stuff in the last couple. Like, let's just go and say, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, with All Bodies on Bikes.
Brilliant.
That was
brilliant.
That
was amazing.
That's beautiful.
Brought tears to my eyes.
I watched it like 3 times and I cried at 3 different places in it, and I've told them too, like, that was amazing, right? Okay, All Bodies on Bikes. That means all bodies on bikes, right, folks? Like,
all of them.
Like, I'm a body. I know there's lots of other trans folks who have bodies too. We want to ride bikes. We want to race bikes. We want to spectate at people riding bikes. So that is a thing, the steps that other companies have made. I love the stuff that Velocio has done, Machines for Freedom has done. They've done amazing body stuff there. Actually, I will say, let me take that back and say the efforts that Velocio has done, they have very publicly said, you know what? We're out. We're not going to support this non-inclusion. And I'm great friends with Erin, who's over there, and I thank her very much for that support that they've had. And I know from talking to Erin, with the different Erin with the stamina team, they have that level of support for Machines as well. And so I thank them for that. But there are lots of other companies. Those are small companies. Those are very comparatively small to some of the other large companies. And it's not just the manufacturers, it's the retailers as well. Where are the REIs?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I think, Doug, you mentioned it, and I want to jump in and make mention of it, because I think you're playing with generational fear of just kind of Americans,
making notes over here, right?
General,
the word fear, like, super big,
and it's fear in a lot of different ways. It's fear of unknown. I don't understand this thing. Can you help me understand what this this world is and your experiences are? I don't understand the healthcare piece of it. I don't understand how you feel like you're scared. But then there's the other piece of the fear of, I don't want to lose this customer. I don't want to have them be negative towards me. But to me, I I look at that and I think back to watching the the Dog Whisperer, where if he had a dog that was completely unmanageable and the parents didn't know what to do with it, he brought it to his pack and let the pack sort that dog out. And the fact of the matter is if us as Americans, as a pack, not even necessarily talking about bike racing, if we start to alienate that behavior and say it is not welcome here, it is not welcome in cycling. I don't care if you're going to buy a $12,000 bike every year. Get out of our world. We don't want you here. And replace that with $100, $300 bikes that people want to go commute around Brooklyn or commute around Boston or whatever urban center that you want to live in, and just commute and buy just a bike that gets you to and from. It doesn't have to be anything special. I will take that all day. Get that person the hell out of my world. Not even necessarily my cycling world. Get them the hell out of my community, because I don't want that hate in my world. And I don't want it in my niece and nephew's world that are 3 and 1 respectively. I don't want that in your kids' world. I don't want that in any of our future kids' worlds that are listening to this, because they need a world that is better. And we can't continue to make that okay. We can't let that fear of having somebody be pissed at me and be pissed at my brand. And I've been on that side of trying to manage the social media. Like, managing a social account that had 125 different stores changing tires. You can imagine the amount of hatred that I got on a daily basis from things that were done wrong, actively done wrong. But we're talking about hypotheticals here. Like, if that's what we're talking about, and you want to take a stand as a brand on how to move culture forward and how to put all bodies on bikes, what the hell are we talking about? Like, what are we doing in terms of leading society forward?
Because we have gotten to a place in bike world, right, where there are certain topics got enough traction that it went over the top, and they said, okay, this is no longer acceptable. But okay, that happened. That finally happened with BLM. Finally happened, right? Like it's bonkers that we have to say it finally got so bad that the bike industry collectively stood up and did something, right?
And now I've got to say there's far more representation in most media for people of color than there has ever been.
But when we're seeing out, like, where are the great number of bicycles made or the components manufactured? They're made in Asia. How many brands have we seen stand up against Asian hate in the last few months? When we're like one, maybe, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, where were all the brands on January 6th making statements saying this is disgusting and absurd? Where was everybody? This is just, and I hate to say, it's like, oh, well, I kind of could have figured this was going to happen with the trans stuff. Okay, because we can lead by example here, bike industry. And when you do see folks like, again, bicycling or cycling tips or the gravel lot or Velocio or other companies that are smaller sometimes, or media leading, like, it should tell the bike industry, like, hey, we can do this too.
Yeah.
Like, we can most definitely do this.
So because and again, I go back to that first thing that you said of the people that are around you, whether they know you intimately or not, they are standing up to support this cause. They are standing up to support those of us, or those that need it right now. And those of us like myself are like standing in solidarity. And it's like, how can you as one of the industry leaders look at that and not look at that as, if we're talking raw dollars and cents here, of like, they don't want to lose the 55-year-old dentist that's going to buy that new bike every year. Okay, fine.
There are no bikes to sell these people right now anyway.
Exactly.
So
there's no bikes to sell. But if you can replace that one person with the hundreds and thousands of people that bought bikes last year for the whole reason that we don't have any bikes this year, because they rediscovered the sport and rediscovered this thing that's really fun. Awesome. I'm happy watching that dentist go bye-bye.
Yeah. Peace out, dentist. Look, the world is moving to a place where we're trying to figure out how to include people in our world, because we all love the thing that we love, right? We all love bikes, or we all love banjo music, or we all love bongos, or skiing, or what the hell ever you love. What you want is more people in the thing that you love so that you can share it with more people. This is an inherently human desire, right?
But do they?
What?
But do they? Question mark? Or do we just say that, right? Like,
so here's the thing. I think it should be, right? And I think this is the challenge, is you bump into this space where people want to maintain a thing where they want to other people because they're only trying to keep their thing for themselves. And until we actually reckon with the fact that this thing doesn't belong to you, and it is not your thing, and it is actually everyone that ever wants to approach it, and actually approach the problem as that, we're getting fucking nowhere. Like, we are going to continually put ourselves in this space where we're going to other people. We're going to put people outside the space of cycling. Specifically, if we want to talk about cycling, we're going to be like, oh, well, you didn't wear your socks the correct height, didn't wear the right kit, you didn't do the blah, 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 blah. All the crap we bitch about you not being able to be part of this. I think this is the challenge that the cycling industry, and right now should be a clarion call to say, this is a moment for you. You had one last summer.
Yeah.
You got another right now.
It's the best PR mulligan that you could ever ask for.
Right. Step through the door. Step through the freaking door and be in this space and actually embrace what you say you really want to be about bikes for everyone.
People like the number of people who will actually race a bicycle are like, it's going to fit on the pinhead, right? Like, yeah. We're so proportionally small.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is the thing that we, as the bicycle industry, we as the cycling media, really love to talk about, because sporting stuff is actually, it's low-hanging fruit of things to talk about. Somebody wins, somebody loses. There are these stories that happen, and we're good at telling them as a sport, right? Or as an industry. So if that's the story we're going to tell people, we have to do the best job of trying to make that inclusive until we're able to figure out how we tell the entire other story. But for me, if one of the learnings I've had working at a couple of bike shops for the last 9 months of my life has been like the number of, like, I can probably count on one, maybe two hands, the number of people who have come into the shop, of the quite literally hundreds or thousands of people who've come into both shops in Brooklyn who will race a bicycle. It's so like teeny tiny small, but at the same time, I can virtually guarantee that every single one of those people has jumped on somebody's social media at some point in time. They've jumped on to see what is the bike shop doing? What is this bike company that I want to buy tires from doing? What is this company that I want to buy a bell from, or a helmet from, or a lock from doing? They want to feel a connection because we're asking them to part with some money, and they want to see, what does this brand that I'm spending my money on represent, because this is a purchase that I'm making that I might have to have for a considerable amount of time.
Well, and that same philosophy goes back to the whole crux of what we're talking about here, of moving things out of Arkansas, is you want to be proud in that tire that you just purchased. Yes. Or you want to be proud in your local bike shop, because that's my bike shop. Like, this is at its core, yeah, it's capitalism, but this is, again, trying to move culture forward by using the basic tenets of capitalism to try and constrict behavior.
I don't go to Chick-fil-A.
Me either. I don't shop at Hobby Lobby.
Me neither.
Wow. It's amazing. I haven't done those things.
And
either.
like, and
it's almost like
you don't have those where you are. There's
there is a Chick-fil-A a couple towns over, and I pass by it sometimes, and I never. It's like there's nobody there on a Sunday. Like if you're gonna go there on a Sunday. No, that was the joke. That was the joke.
Okay, so I think
so much for a clean hour that you guys talked about. We're almost at
clean hours are stupid.
We're at clean almost 90 minutes.
It's when the bus leaves the station and you're driving 90 miles an hour like this, you tend to cover a lot of territory. But I think to that point, I think it's time to start to wrap things up and again take some of the comments from the comment section, wrap those up into the AMA. For anyone that's watching, of the folks that are watching on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, any of those, if you have any questions you want to submit, things. I've been loving the commentary today. You guys have actually, hopefully you've been seeing it, that I've actually been kind of embedding some of the commentary into this conversation already. If there's any additional questions you want us to throw into the AMA, please get them now. Drop them in there now so we can get them in. Or if you want, if it's for some reason you don't want them answered on the show, but you still want some sort of follow-up, please go ahead and submit them to our social media accounts, or the contact page on thegravellot.com, and we'll get Tara or find the right person to get those answers figured out. If we can't get them ourselves, that way we're not outing anybody or asking your question that you're not comfortable with on the actual podcast. So that being said, that means we have to wrap up. So Tara, of the
we have set everything on fire tonight.
Yes, of the very lighthearted conversation that we had tonight, and very short-reaching impacts that we discussed. What would you like the Pebbles to take home from this week's conversation?
Oh boy. Oh, see, you didn't even prep me.
Did it again. Last time you were stumped and you knew it was coming again.
Oh, I know it's coming. At least I'll be prepared if Myerson ever has me on. I'll prep and listen to like all the Prince catalog. But I think the big thing is to explain to folks that this is a topic. Trans representation, trans inclusion, LGBTQ inclusion in the cycling space, it matters to a lot of people. It's not just the 1 in 10 queer people who are out there. This matters to everybody because everybody knows somebody who is queer in the cycling world. Whether you know it or not, you know somebody. And I want to stand up. I want to stand up with those other people. I want to stand up for those other people. And I think that it behooves all of us to make a safer, more inclusive, more welcoming cycling universe. It's not just about, yes, we need to move this event. We need to move these events, plural. It's not just that. It's about taking a stand and saying, we represent better ideals and morals as an activity, as a sport, and thus as an activity. And we want to see that portrayed throughout everybody. We want to see everybody in cycling, everybody who rides a bike, whether they are riding. I want everybody included who rides a bike. Whether they are on a World Cup cyclocross podium, hopefully someplace besides Arkansas, or they're a kid who's just getting on a bike for their first time and learning how to ride, without their parents holding their back down the bike path, or the person who's delivering me Chinese food on $1,000 e-bike. Like, all those people ride bikes and they're all important.
I think that's where the bike industry needs to find its intersectionality, right? This is so easy. This is a freaking gimme. the bike is intersectionality. And until we actually realize it's about intersectionality and decolonization, and it becomes a tool for political movement and all of that, like, I agree with you, and I love it that is where this conversation needs to happen. We all come to this around the bike. That's why this show exists, because everybody who's been on the show has a bike in their life and it's meant something to them. And that's why we all connect, because we all understand that language. And I love that's where we need to be, and that's what we need to focus on.
Well,
we need to continually push ourselves to focus on that and understand where this matters for all the people that use a bike.
And that's why the second half of the first sentence of every show says, no matter what ride you're on, you'll always have a place in the gravel lot.
Bingo.
Like, that is on purpose, because that's how we want to move forward.
Thank you, Tara, for reinforcing.
Yes,
the
but I want to get one more thing before we go into the ad read and go into the AMA.
Okay.
You forgot something in your final takeaway.
Oh shoot! What did I forget?
Yeah.
Plug your show.
Oh shoot! That's right.
I forgot one other thing that John forgot.
Oh, so
crap!
Everybody make sure. Yeah. See, like, this is because we got so in depth onto everything else. Yeah, go onto your favorite podcast downloading place. Go to YouTube. Go to wherever else. Go watch Pink Blue White podcast. We're on. I'm gonna have more episodes. I promise you all that. Lining up some guests for the future. I got a lot of stuff going on in life, and ergo, I haven't yet kind of sorted out a date for these things, but it will happen.
So, speaking of things that are going on for life, so we didn't do this earlier, but I believe you've got some hot off the press.
I have very hot.
You have a hot off the press announcement. I know that you've been working hard in the background. Can you give us a little hot off the press announcement?
So, as of today, I'm very stoked to announce that on 4/26, I will be starting a role as a senior test editor with Bicycling Magazine. So I'm stoked, and I'm going to be relocating over to Easton, Pennsylvania, at some point during the summer, and I'm stoked. Great people, and I'll say part of it is I'm going there because it's a welcoming environment, and there are welcoming people there who are doing amazing work in promoting the activity of bikes. And that's something that I hold as a fundamental tenet myself, and I want to go help them in that quest, and I'm really stoked to be.
My heart is so full for you. That is so good. And I haven't asked you about this before, so this is like the reveal you wouldn't tell me before. So thank you. Oh God, that makes me so happy for you, Tara. That just like,
thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, see, this is how we ended on a positive, awesome note. We got an awesome advocate in a space that is probably one of the biggest ones in all US media. So that is so wonderful for sure. So, everyone, we're going to knock the AMA. We may all have to go take a slight break. We'll see how we have to do. But always a huge thanks to all of you, our Pebbles. Thank you for hanging on. I know we went a lot longer than we normally would, but these are important issues that matter to John and I, and obviously matter to Tara. This is part of our family. This is something that we need to be moving forward. So thank you to all of you for sticking around, and thank you for all of you, because we cannot bring this content to you without your support. Make sure you like us on all the things, subscribe to us on all the things, follow us, do all the appropriate actions on whatever platform,
or disagree with us on all the things. That's fine too. Let's have the conversation.
Yeah, and we may tell you you're wrong, but we love you, and we want to have these conversations so that we can all be better humans. But also, if you are feeling so inclined, please join us on Patreon and become a supporter so that we can continue to make this happen every single week.
In addition to your generous support as Patreons keeping this show afloat, we encourage you guys to go support these people that are supporting our show in whatever way you see fit. We have some discount codes for you guys, but these are, in terms of like, who do we sanction as brands that you guys should go follow and be a part of? These are definitely the people that if you need new kit, if you need coffee, if you need a fit, if you need chamois cream, if you need gloves, apparel, all of those things, like these are our family, and we want you guys to look at them as family as well. So go support our sponsors. They keep us moving forward. They keep us motivated, and honestly, they keep like filling us with more guests that they want to hear stories
really
from.
Good.
So
they're really
good at that.
Yeah, for sure. First off, we want to thank our wonderful friends at Be For Your Ride Bikes Cycling Apparel. John and I have been outfitted by them for several years. Unbelievable stuff. So much so that a local team I know, Mama Pasta, has decided they're doing their re-kit this year with BFRB Cycling Apparel because the kit is so primo. So if you need cycling apparel for your team, go check out bfrbcycling.com. Or if you just want to pick up some stuff because you need some new gear for the summer, because everybody's basically been riding the trainer in the same pair of bibs for 1,000 miles, has basically worn out in the butt. And if someone's behind you, they're going to see your literal butt. Go check out bfrbcycling.com and take a look at how they can get you outfitted to look super sweet when you finally see other human beings in the world in 2021.
You know, I think our ad reads by themselves are the best representation of why brands should reach out to us to be partners.
Correct. I agree. 100%.
There is like, is there anything better than a TGL ad read?
No, there isn't. It's very legitimately, I mean, maybe a Mabim Bam ad read, but that's a whole different thing. But that's like, they get actually paid.
Yeah, right. Well, whatever. Also, you guys know by now, go buy the Grimport Brothers coffee. Dan finally has his internet back up and running after the great power outage of 2021. And he has been a longtime supporter of the work that we're doing, whether it was with Wide Angle Podium or now that we're kind of branched out on our own and trying to spawn up these other projects. So he has been an amazing supporter of us, but also the guy makes amazing coffee. It is small batches that are hand roasted in his house every week of hand-picked coffee beans from around the world, caffeinated, decaf. And the coolest part about Grimport Brothers is every single one of those blends comes packaged together in a neat little package with some sort of cause that part of the proceeds and part of the profits from that bag of coffee goes to support. So whether it's an athlete, whether it's an event, whether it's a cause, it doesn't matter what it is. Dan is putting literal dollars out of his business into these causes every single week. On top of the fact that, again, you're getting these hand-roasted blends. You're getting a handwritten note on your UPS Air Pack mailer. There is no better personalized coffee service, and that's completely underscoring the fact that this is the most amazing coffee I've ever had. It is a joy to be able to wake up every morning and grind beans to make new coffee every morning. So, Dan, thank you for that. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being family. Korean dad heart for Dan out there. And for anyone that wants to get involved, GrimportBrothers.com. Go there now, and if you get the subscription service, you'll get a free bag of coffee with that subscription service. So really, I don't know what you're waiting for.
You shouldn't be waiting, but
maybe the morning, because then you'll like be awake all night.
Well, I mean, it's fine. Choose your poison, whichever way you wish to do this. Also, a massive thanks to Mitch at BioWheels Fit Studio. BioWheels Fit Studio right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, has an amazing selection of bikes, but also the best fitting services in the Midwest, if not like maybe the universe. That's basically what I'm going to say, is basically the universe. People travel all over to get with Mitch and his fitting services, and get yourself to him if you need to get yourself set up for the appropriate bike long term. He offers the most efficient, comfortable, and sustainable bike fit that you've probably ever had, and he has a full host of Cervelo, Specialized, Moots, I was
just shopping there today, biowheels.com, because to our point of talking about brands and supporting brands, I want to get a different frame set for my gravel bike, and I was looking at what Mitch had in inventory, and he's updating it every week based on what he knows is already in the store, but also what's on
the Suez Canal.
Right, or what's stuck in the Suez Canal and what's on its way. But it is things that are all guaranteed delivery, and they all have delivery dates, so you can see when your bike is going to show up, or you can see when something is in stock. It's already got the sizes. It already has all of the componentry that's going to come on it. So it is like, in terms of having access right now when no one has bikes, the fact that there's a couple hundred bikes that are listed on his incoming bike registry list, like, it's awesome. And I was able to scroll through there and find things that I can't afford. But it's nice to dream, right? Like,
yeah, no, it's good to
cool.
dream. And if you've got dreams, go to Mitch's site, biowheels.com, and you can check all of that out, and he will get you sorted out when you're ready to buy your next bike.
And if you're one of those people that Doug was talking about a minute ago, where you have the transparent butt on your bibs or your shorts, if you decide to wear shorts, that's cool. We're not gonna do that. I started in shorts. But if that's you, then because you're putting on so many miles on the trainer, you probably need chamois cream, because the important stuff is chafy and it hurts. So you should get the Ritual All Natural Skincare, which is, again, just like Dan's coffee, but it goes in a different location. Little darker
this podcast
location.
has gotten very suddenly
I know,
blue.
but just like it. Small batch, handmade chamois cream, made in batches of 20. This is as personalized as you can get. They are all locally sourced, all natural ingredients. So think shea butter, vegetable oils, coconut butter, like things like that are actually good for your skin, and they're all put together in a great formulation that makes for an amazing chamois cream. And the coolest part about the Ritual is that you can get custom blends for your team, for your shop, or for yourself. So if you want your own labeling, if you want menthol, if you don't want menthol, or if you want it to smell like lavender and not tea tree, then you can do all of those things with the Ritual, and you can get your own custom blended chamois cream today. Get a hold of Doug and I at the Gravel Lot on all the forms of social media, or us personally, to figure out how you can order that today.
So we've learned that don't put coffee beans where the chamois cream goes, and don't put chamois cream where the coffee beans go.
There's probably gonna be, like, now that they're putting caffeine in everything, like skincare now has caffeine in it, so it's probably, hey, Dan, I know you're still listening. There's co-branding opportunities.
Yeah, this is definitely
TM,
a weird
TM.
Weird co-branding opportunity.
Caffeinated chamois cream.
But you know what? If there was anyone who was going to co-brand this and get in on this, it would definitely be our friends at Hand Up Gloves. They would think this is a great idea. Hell, they may do a drink for Friday. We may get Troy to actually go do a drink on Friday that mixes coffee beans and chamois cream and some sort of obscure liquor. Because
and we'll call it the Gravel Lot.
God, no, I'm not drinking it, John. It's not happening. But Hand Up Gloves has been with us since the start. Awesome folks. If you guys haven't checked out all their awesome videos, Troy this week was hungover trying to make a drink, and that was fantastic. We're working on a Gravel Lot version of the drink. We just got to be in the same location to film it. And now that John's fully vaxxed, we're going to make that happen. Make sure to go check them out. Awesome gloves, awesome apparel. It's freaking jorts season. And I got called out for wearing jorts the other day through a friend of mine. Like, one of my friends saw me in jorts and was like, Doug was wearing brand new jorts, and told another friend of mine, who then told me, like, hey, you got caught wearing jorts. I was like, yeah, it's jorts.
Good.
Like, these are comfortable jorts. So get your jorts, get your gloves, get ready for jort season. Go to Hand Up, but you got to do it through the link in our show notes so that you can save yourself 10% off in store by entering code Pebble $. So click the link in the show notes and do that and save yourself 10%. Pebble $. Hand Up Gloves. Love y'all. We miss you. Look forward to seeing you in 2021.
I feel like we could start a whole nother podcast of just doing ad reads.
That was amazing.
And just that's it. That's the podcast. That's
20 minutes of ad read.
It's a 20-minute ad read of just, stream of consciousness ad reads. Okay, so we've said it before. We're going to say it again. We love hearing from all you guys, the good and the bad. Today is definitely one of those conversations where we want you guys to reach out and tell us what you think. Visit all of our social media, go to thegravellot.com, hit up the contact form, find old episodes of The Gravel Lot. Tomorrow, a new episode of Girls Moving Mountains drops. Next Wednesday, another episode of the Bike Shop Show drops. Whenever we can get Tara pinned down, we're going to have another episode of Pink, Blue, White for you guys. In addition to the Beeline articles, all of our old content is up on thegravellot.com as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram. I think that's all of them. LinkedIn as well. If that's your jam, that's cool. We're not going to judge because we're everywhere. Doug's still trying to figure out what he's going to do for TikTok, but I'm going to just let him run that. So we'll just let Doug.
Yeah, I will.
TikTok.
I mean, it's going to be, I already know the musics that I want to do.
Perfect. Of course. So regardless of what platform you want to engage with us on, go there, like us, follow it, share it. And let's continue to keep this conversation moving forward.
Absolutely. So our intro and outro music, well, Tara steps away to nature calls. It calls for all of us, and it's likely to call for me very shortly. Our intro and outro music is from our friend Waterboy. So many thanks to him for all the jams. Make sure to check him out on all the major platforms. Link in the show notes if you need some good music to keep yourself jamming. All sorts of good stuff coming out of there right now. I'm real stoked with all his good new music. So we're going to take a super quick pause. Everybody's doing stuff. We have some AMA questions coming. I know they're coming in. If you've got AMA questions, drop them right now. We're compiling them. John, you got any?
Yeah.
Anything you need to do?
If you want to go,
Good?
I can hold the ship down, and then you come back, and then I'll go.
No, I'm totally kosher.
I mean, we can't ask any questions because
no, we can't because we don't have anyone to ask. You can ask me a question. Do you want to ask me a question?
I don't care. I talk to you enough.
most of our life
is actually just,
hey, how are you doing? What's going on? How's it going? I saw a cute puppy today, though. My friend Greg sent me. I sent you a real good here. Let me see if I can pull up this puppy photo and you can see it on the stream because this dog is really freaking cute and it belongs on my stream. It's a little like. It's a little husky. Let's see if I can make it.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. How cute.
Shut up.
How cute is that dog?
Those are danger eyes.
That dog is so freaking adorable. So this is how we get puppies on the stream. But it's got good toe beans and everything.
Oh, man. Actually, this is great. This is great. Like, this is, if you want your dog featured on the stream, text us photos.
Oh, yeah. Text us photos. I just have shared the first actual dog on the live stream.
That's not like like one of our live dogs, his snoring in the background or mine invading the live stream.
But that is my friend Greg's new dog. I'm very excited that Greg has a new dog. It's super cute, and I hope it shows up on all of my D&D games.
As it gets bigger.
Well, I mean, I am assuming it's going to get bigger. I mean, I would appreciate it if it stayed that size because it's pretty freaking cute at that size, but I have a feeling that is going to become a husky. All right, Tara.
I'm back.
All right, good.
I didn't see your note till after I had already departed.
No, you're fine. It's great. It was. This is spur of the moment. We're good. We're making it happen. All right.
That was the best ad reads I've ever heard in my life.
Well, thank you.
You always ace that.
All right. So let's start with a couple questions, and we're gonna try to knock them out quick so we can get on with the rest of our.
All right. Well, if you're gonna go first, then I'm gonna take my nature break.
Oh, I appreciate that. There you go. What is that beer? That looks lovely. It's called. It says I saw Dyke on it, and so
yes,
now
it is Dyke beer.
Fantastic, beautiful.
And it has a cat and a dog. So it's a saison, and it's brewed in Brooklyn, and the money actually goes to supporting lesbian bars. It was a fundraiser for lesbian bars. I don't know if they still have any available, but you can follow them on Instagram. And I got a couple cases from them, and I've been slowly
working
it. And I figured, this is there's a lot to celebrate tonight. So it's a 2 Dyke beer serving night.
I back it. 2 Dyke beer serving night. I back it. So, okay. The first question we have is a pretty interesting one. And I think it speaks to our kind of 3 buckets, but kind of adds a little separate bucket, kind of like an ancillary bucket on the bucket conversation. So we've seen a lot of athletes still racing or participating events in states with these exclusionary laws. Specifically, last weekend, a U.S. Cup mountain bike race in Arkansas. So some of those athletes have vocally supported trans rights on their social media and some haven't. How do you feel, A, about their efforts? What could they be doing better? And how do you feel about pros boycotting events? Is that something they need to be doing, or should they still be able to race those events because they have commitments in the other spaces from sponsors or teams or that sort of thing? Where do you come down in that space?
I think there's a lot of personal decisions that have to be made there. And I can't, particularly for a lot of elite level athletes, having worked very closely with many elite level athletes over the years, they have there's obligations that need to be done. Um, some of it training wise and some of it being back to racing form, because there are events such as the Olympics coming up. And I don't know how everything I'll be honest and say I haven't looked at how things formulate out for Olympic points and selection criteria and stuff like that. I think that some of that is very valid. I think additionally, there might be some athletes who are personally, they live there, they're invested, that is their community, and that might be their way to make a statement, is by being there and being loud and being vocal. And I think that all comes down to some personal choices, but it also comes down to the fact that the event promoters and USA Cycling and others should not be putting the athletes in that position. I don't want to do that event because I don't think it's safe, or I don't like that promoter because I think what they're doing is wrong, or things like that. I have almost always, I can't remember a time where I haven't said, no, you know what? I support you not going to that event. And I think that more times than not, the sponsors will be supportive of those actions.
So, are you heartened by seeing the actions of athletes in solidarity? Is that a thing that has been a positive boost?
Yeah, I think that, I'll be honest and say I didn't see a lot of it. I did see some of it. I saw Ellen's. I see Ellen's stuff because I am a fangirl of Ellen, and I saw some of Tyler's stuff, but I didn't see a whole lot. And maybe that is because also it's the algorithms of stuff that I'm getting buried by, right? Like I don't follow a ton of cross-country athletes. I follow more cyclocross athletes or downhill athletes. So I probably see that stuff first on my Facebook or Instagram feeds. So some of that is the algorithm, right?
That's a good piece of it. All right, what do we got next?
I actually want to follow that. When you see people on the internet, we're just going to say people on the internet, to your kind of point, slagging off some of the athletes that are going to like the cross country race this weekend. How do you feel when you see people on the internet reaching out to those folks and being really aggressive and wanting to just kind of shut them out of any sort of relevance?
I think there is a point of activism to it. I think that people do in bike world, we forget how personal some of these people are, right? Like it's not like we're talking to an NBA star or an NFL star or some, global soccer person or, some Grand Tour rider, where a lot of times it's way less than 6 degrees of separation. Like we're probably like Facebook friends with them and actually see like what they post and what they're having for dinner, right? So I think that we sometimes forget that just because they're pros, it's not like their social media manager or their agency is reading these tweets or these Facebook comments. It's the actual athletes. That has the good side and the bad side. I'm not going to tone police other people who who feel it's important to say these things. I've said some stuff to some athletes personally. I don't believe I've said anything in this circumstance to athletes in a public space. I think that if the athletes care about what I think, they know who I am and they'll reach out to me.
I mean, I think that says volumes, though. But you have relationships with these people already because you've worked with them before,
right?
Yeah, and I haven't worked, honestly, I haven't worked with a lot like on that, that brand to athlete. I haven't worked with the cyclocross athletes. I haven't worked with many of the current cross country athletes, but I do know. I know these people from races, right? Like I know them from being at events,
right?
So it's different in that regard. But I do think that I think a lot of them know what they have to do. They are just between a rock and a hard place of they got to figure it out. And again, I'm not going to tone police what some other people's feelings are, because I think a lot of the feelings are very valid.
Well, and I think it's good to have that sort of conversation about this, because no matter whether you want to pull an event from a location or you just want to be mad at a rider that's trying to fulfill part of their contract and commitments, that's fine. You have every right to feel that way. But I think it's also important to have the conversation to show how that's way more nuanced. And it's not nearly as disconnected as a lot of folks think it is. Like, you're not nearly as disconnected from a domestic pro cross, road, or mountain bike, or pretty much anything racer as you actually think you are, if you're just lobbing those grenades out into the world, because more than likely they are the ones that are reading it, and they are the ones that are going to type the response. It's not going to be, a handler giving you the like, hey, thanks for your input, we'll be sure to pass it on to whoever the athlete is.
And I'm not saying that people need to be necessarily delicate, right? It's not like pro athletes aren't like these delicate flowers that you can't hurt their feelings. But they are people, and we probably sometimes don't realize some of the words that we're saying to them, and the impact they're saying it. And like in relation to some stuff going back several months, like me and Becca Farringer, I probably did step over a line with saying some stuff to Becca in that internet sense. And then Becca and I had an offline conversation in which, and I can't remember what the hell it was about now, right? But like in retrospect, okay, maybe I was a little heated and I did step over to that line. But I think we all have to, everybody's line is different.
Right.
The subject matter is different at all times. But I do think that, I think it is very valid for people to say, hey, I'm your friend, and I'm your fan, and I look up to you, and I don't want to see you pulling this shit. And I think that has a lot of effect. And I do think that there is power in saying to athletes, like, hey, I really respect you, and I want to continue to respect you. Please speak out on this, because you have a platform. And for those people who listened to my show the other day, last week before, if you listen to my recent show, you would have heard a young cyclocross athlete who is trans say who her heroes in the sport are. And I think that's important, right? Like when she says like that Ellen Noble and Katie Compton are her heroes, that should mean something. I'm sure that means something. I know Ellen personally. I'm sure that means something to Ellen very personally. I don't know Katie. I would hope that means something to Katie.
Absolutely.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
But
I love that from that space.
But it kind of just adding on to what you're saying, I think it is, if we're all trying to move the narrative forward and we all want the best for the most, I think it's always important to measure your words accordingly, rather than just have that internet lob of hate out to somebody, because it's not constructive. That immediately puts somebody on the defense and makes them feel like shit. And it's not actually helping anything. It might make the person that's saying it feel better in the moment, but it doesn't if you're actually wanting to move the needle forward or try and elicit some sort of change. It's not more bees with honey, as it were.
Not always.
Sometimes you need to kick somebody in the nuts.
Sometimes you kind of do, and I think snarkasm is a great form of
snarkasm. I've never heard that, but now I'm stealing it. All right,
move along. Move this ship along. Let's go.
So I got this is kind of a two-part. So we'll do the first part and then roll into the second. So, in your opinion, what does boycotting Fayetteville do for the trans community as a whole? Is it gonna make the lives of those athletes who are being singled out better?
Yes, I think it will, because just us rabble-rousing a little bit right now has brought enough attention that's even now escaping our low bike bubble, right? If you saw Chris Mosier did lean on USA Cycling last night, and it's like, hey, Chris has a huge platform. And I know personally that other journalists outside of the cycling space follow me, have liked some comments. They're seeing it. That it's getting noticed. So yes, us making some noise is getting noticed. And I think that something like a boycott, the word boycott gets both sides of people really riled up, right? And there's something just in that alone that it gets people to draw attention and say, why are these people riled up? I want to know about it.
Right.
And I want to know what the issues are. So I haven't personally, maybe come to a point of saying boycott this event, because I'm still at the point of saying move the damn event, right?
Yeah.
I haven't yet said boycott this event, because I don't think we're to the point that we should be saying the event's still there.
Well, right, and boycott, as you said, it's such a strong word that takes precedence over every other word in whatever paragraph you're reading through. You end up just focusing on that word, and it becomes kind of all-encompassing to whatever your message is. So the minute that you say that, everything you're talking about gets centered around the idea of boycott, boycott, boycott.
So what you're saying, Tara, if I'm parsing this correctly, is while that isn't off the table and would still be beneficial if we got to the point where this event still happens in this place and it's intended, maybe that is the right process. We're not down that road yet. And the next thing what we need to be focused on is trying to get this moved to a safe space.
Yes.
As the priority.
It's part of the if-then statements on the Gantt chart we talked about earlier, Doug.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If the event is not moved, then what's the other fallout from this? Yes. And I think that boycott is most definitely on that considerable set.
And I think that goes into the second part of this is when talking through this, and I think that this goes back to that whole idea that boycott becomes this dominant phrase when people are talking about this, and some of the comments that came in are wholly centered around this, is like, a boycott's not enough. So for those people who might have gotten hemmed up on the idea of like boycott is the solution, that's what we're gonna do. What do you say to the folks who think that that's not enough, and that an active protest in person, sit-in, active protest blocking the starting line, whatever that looks like, some sort of physical presence, what do you say to those folks who think that also it's a yes and type situation?
Well, I'm not giving away the cards on that yet because then they're not going to let me into the venue, perhaps, right? Uh,
Ah,
no. Honestly, I haven't thought about that stuff, right? Like,
But I feel like
I,
based on what you're saying previously, that it's also part of the if
yeah,
then equation. Like it couldn't
like,
not be, because there's like the things that worked in the past. Like all you have to do is, if you want a playbook, go to the civil rights movement. Like there's a lot of
well,
things we know.
there's lots of things that we can do,
sure.
but like in the short term and perhaps midterm, we need to be focused on how are we moving this event, where are we moving it to, and how do we make sure the event, once it's moved, is successful.
Yeah.
Okay.
That way we don't have to think about all the other shit, right?
Yep.
Like, I think that's what we're losing. Like, we're trying to like look 9 months down the road and say, well, let's do all this other stuff instead of
No.
thinking about the important thing, which is we all can agree we want to have the event. I think that is something that that people who are on the promoter side, people who are on USAC side, the UCI side, and people who are fans, activists, whoever else, we are all in agreement saying we want to have cyclocross worlds in the United States of America. Do I necessarily want to have it in Arkansas? No, that's where we disagree.
Right.
I want to go someplace else and have it. They're still hanging on to have it in Arkansas. So I think that's where the dialogue is right now.
Well, and I think that we said it earlier. I think like that's where the argument happening and unfolding on Twitter is not necessarily constructive, because you're so restricted by the platform itself. So you can't have that conversation that you just explained in 15 seconds. That's like 15 tweets.
Right. So
it's a thread.
Yeah, it's a whole. Hey, Threader app, unroll. Threader app, unroll. So to that specific point, I'm jumping around in what's in our AMA here. So if someone wants to be actively involved, right? Someone is like, this matters to me. This is important. I want to help. Who should they be following? What nonprofits should they be following? Where should they be getting engaged from a informational standpoint about whether it's just this cycling process that we're talking about, or a little bit broader? Like, where are some places that you think people should go look at and follow and get some information from?
Yeah.
Aside from yourself, because you're a great font of
I'm
every
really
morning angry tweet at Robbie Martini.
That's because I haven't yet had my Grandpa Brothers coffee.
Thank you, Darren.
You know, but first coffee, right?
But first.
But I think that it is, and it's the same thing that I tried to actively do a lot more of a year ago, which was I did pause for a moment, and instead of just yelling into the void about BLM type stuff, I stopped and I said, you know what? I need to back up and I need to listen to the voices in the Black community and follow them. And I knew then was not the time to be having dialogue, but is to absorb what they're saying. And I followed and have remained following and engaging in conversation and becoming friends with a lot of more folks in the Black community. I think people in the cycling community, cis folks in the cycling community, listen to a lot more. Just follow trans drivers. Follow me. Follow Molly Cameron. I don't want to go and out folks. Right? It's hard. It's like, do I want to out folks on Twitter? But there are a lot of folks on Twitter. You can just generally Twitter, Instagram, whatnot. You can follow in relation to other topics or other folks you should be following who are very close to the issue. Is and I just half lost my train of thought there, probably because I didn't have dinner and I'm enjoying a lot of Zyke beer right now. But false at Chase Strangio.
Strangio.
Like they are so on the pulse of every single thing that's happening, every single state legislative action that's happening, everything like that. ACLU is another great one. It's following folks and just paying attention to what's happening so you can then be actively involved. And same thing, Chris Mosier, if you're not following Chris Mosier, follow Chris, because they've got just a lot of things that we need to be hearing anyway. So it's following the voices that are pertinent in the community. When it comes down to, who should you be following and giving your money to, and to that again, like when it comes to, in the national broad level of trans rights or queer rights or stuff, I actually am much in favor of right now just getting local and finding out who is the local, particularly if you're in one of the states where there is legislation that has either passed or legislation is under consideration. Follow your local as you can get, whether it's in your city, your county, your region, your state, your tri-state, wherever it is. Try to follow those LGBTQ organizations, trans organizations, if they exist. Amplify what they're saying, ingest what they're saying, listen to it, amplify it, and give them money. Like, let them fund them so that they can keep on putting out those statements, because that they can keep on doing that research, that they can keep on showing up to courthouses and keep on following those injunctions and all that stuff. That's what's most important, right? Like, there are these large national organizations. There's Trans Legal, there's Trevor Project, and et cetera, but those are very well-funded national organizations. They're getting big corporate money. Go and bring this to the local level, because those are the people who need the most help right now. Those are the people that when you give your $25 or your $100, that's where it really matters, right? Like when you're up late at night and you give $420.69, it's really going to help them. and like, yes, it's going straight from your PayPal or your Venmo account into theirs, and it's probably going to action like the next day or the next week.
That's powerful. And you answered another question that we had in that. So thank you.
How much money to give? $420.69.
Correct. Nice. And I think that was the other question, which is like, where can you put money to make this matter? And I love that you're talking local, because everybody's got a local organization, all sorts of things here in the Cincinnati area. I know there are plenty of things in New York, and it is interesting to think like the ACLU does brilliant work. Don't get me wrong. They are also funded up the wazoo. TGL's contributed to them. We like a number of people do, and people do all over the place. But if you've got a local place, drill down on that and support your local LGBTQ place. And even in places that aren't necessarily doing advocacy in such a space, like we have a place in Cincinnati called Transform Cincy, and it is a place that takes donations of clothes and builds wardrobes based off the desires of these kids who are transitioning. And they come in and they get to pick from these racks of wardrobes, and they have an Amazon list. It's brilliant. If you haven't checked out Transform Cincy, God, they just hit my heart so big. And those sort of places make a difference in LGBTQ youth, their lives. Like those sort of things are lifelines for them.
And those are the kids that you're going to see. Those are the folks you're going to see at the trailhead. Those are the folks you're going to see at Starbucks. Those are the folks, or excuse me, you're not going to drink Starbucks. You're going to drink Grimper Brothers coffee. You're going to drink Grimper Brothers coffee at home, and you're going to give it out to people at the trailhead.
Through that part of your conversation.
But when you have to pee and you got to use the clean bathroom at the Starbucks before the ride, you're going to run into these people there. but what I'm saying, like, these are folks in your community, and going back to what we were talking about during the main show is like the trans community, we are folks in your community. The queer community, we are folks in your community. We are 10% of the population. Like, do you know 10 people? Like, I don't know a lot of people, but I definitely know more than 10 people.
We're 66.6% of the show, so we're good.
It's evil.
Yeah. All politics are local. All right. So
completely local to this podcast.
Yeah. So last one, and this came up when we were talking about USA Cycling, and then it came up again when we're talking about the industry, thinking about
this one's so good.
Yeah, thinking about your time in the bike industry, from what you knew then, what you know now. It's very frank. Are all of the leaders in the big cycling industry just like Rob DeMartini, old white cis males?
I mean, factually, yes, they actually are, right? Like, let's not parse words there. Yeah, like with the exception of a few people, they are all white, cis presenting, heterosexual presenting white males. That's kind of factual. But I will also say that there are having very personally dealt with some of these folks at some of these companies, they're also really real people. And there's a very scant chance that they're listening to this AMA right now, but I will appeal to them, right? Like, Mike Sinyard, we have talked before. You know me. I've met you, John Burke. You ergo, you know me. Stan Day, you know me, right? Folks at Shimano, you know me. These are real people. Like, you can do something here. Stand up, right? The Walton Foundation folks, brothers, whatever the body is there. We know you love bikes. Like, you ride bikes a lot. Like, we know that. Stand up, do something. I can remember there was somebody had said something about, like, this was years and years ago, about how to know, like, your impact is who is the most famous person who knows who you are, right? And when somebody said that to me, I stopped and I thought, and I'm like, and granted, this was a while ago, and I was like, George Bush knows who I am. Okay, and at the time, I was working on a lot of mountain. Yeah, Dub. Because
he's our Eleanor for TGL. If you didn't know,
I just wanted to paint a picture of John.
But he rode mountain bikes, right? And I thought about the fact that, like, at the time I was in a lot of mountain bike media, and I had heard through the grapevines that he was subscribed to all these different mountain bike magazines, and I was like, all right, he inevitably knows who I am, right? Like, so when I think about that, it's like, all right, like, influential people do know some of us trans folks, right? And I've been gifted to know a lot of people in this industry who really do, who really should know what decision to make, right? I don't know if you listened to a competing podcast the other day, but I would definitely urge you, the host of this show, and probably any of the Dear Pebbles out there, to listen to Chris DiStefano being interviewed by James Wong, because he did say some really important stuff in there, as these people know what to do. They just have to go do it. And that's important. And I think that, for any of the folks who might be listening out there who are in a position to, kind of make some change, have that influence, you've got my number. My cell phone number has literally been the same for 21 years. Y'all's got it on your speed dial. Well, not on your speed dial, but nobody has speed dial anymore. Y'all's got it in your contacts. Like, dial me up. I'm here. I'm here to talk this through to you and explain like what has to be done, because you actually know what has to be done. But if you want me to tell you again, I can tell it to you. So
sometimes people just need a little nudge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am at the point where some of these people, I'm going to like full on throw them out of the nest and hope they fly. But,
Sure.
but I think that, we all know what has to be done. Like, again, it goes back to what we were talking about, what I said during the show. Like, people are worried about, like, instead of being worried about whether or not like me, somebody they know, or Molly, somebody they probably know, or other trans folks who they might know, or queer folks who they might know, or even people who might just look queer but aren't queer, who might not get medical service because they look queer. They know these folks, and like instead of standing up and doing something about it, everybody's worried about like putting out social media fires.
Worry about what's important, which is people. Let's get back to worrying about people. So
that would be good, since we don't have anything else to worry about right now.
I mean, there's plenty of other shit to worry about, but if we all just worried about people, right? If we always just worried about our fellow peoples,
it makes a lot of decisions a lot easier, and it centers people really easily.
Oh, like if people just like, oh my God, like if people just
cared,
it's like, it's the whole empathy thing, right? Like people just like just have some empathy for a second, right? Like, I don't ask that all the time that people necessarily agree with everything I say, but please just have some empathy for me. Please have some like basic understand, like the table stakes are really low here. It's like, do you agree that I exist? Right. Okay, cool. Like, all right, like if we can set down the fact that like trans people exist, okay, cool. Like, yay!
That's the ante. We're in the game.
That's in. It's like,
yep.
Yeah, we're playing like it's nickels here, right? Like,
right. Easier. But I think that goes back to where we started everything as we talk tonight, which is like, what is the game? And the game is how we recognize each other really as human beings and start out in this space where we are, learning about that thing and kind of centering ourselves through other people's lived experiences. And so again, like, I want to hit this again. If you have not listened to Tara's show, PBW, like, legit, it moved me to tears while it was being recorded several times. It is powerful. And I have no doubt that every episode past it will be equally powerful in its own way. But it is about centering yourself outside of yourself and thinking about this empathy problem and thinking about being in someone else's space and understanding that. And the conversation y'all had on that call was so pure and so beautiful because it was all of you talking to each other. And I think that's a very powerful thing. So I cannot say this enough. The conversation we've had tonight is wonderful and great, but it is only centered by a conversation of understanding where Tara and the community of LGBTQ folks around her is centered right now. And so I really recommend, if you haven't, Pebbles, go listen to that. It's so, so important that you do, because it is a way for you to understand a thing you may not understand.
Yeah. No, and I thank you for saying that. And I also, it's like one thing I noticed, and I said this to y'all after we finished recording, was that I forgot I was recording a podcast, right? And I was just having a conversation with a bunch of other trans people, right? And I think that that's important, right? Like we when we can let our guards down within groups is when truths get spoken, right? Like we've all been around that group of people in cycling, and all of a sudden the truth bombs start happening, right? And when those things happen in your community, like for me, it's trans folks or queer folks or with other women, other cross racers, right? Like you can break that down. And when those truths start happening, that's when we all let our guard down a little. And I think that was where a lot of the little magic that happened during that PBW recording. I mean, we also found out some amazing things about like not being able to fly through Saudi Arabia, or that
there's some wild
yeah, or that one athlete's favorite hero was Angela Lansbury, right? Like things that we would like, some amazing trivia and amazingly comical stuff all happened during that time, which are the things that happen when we are in groups and
in community,
and we can talk to one another on the same level.
And even beyond that, I think looking at it in terms of some of the questions that you were able to ask, being in that environment and being around your family, you're able to ask questions that are otherwise, I don't want to call them taboo because that's a stupid word, but like just they're more difficult to ask when you don't have that same foundation of that shared experience. And the one that I go back to for me was, hearing about the travel restrictions for Kate making her decisions and things like that. But the one that I go back to is to me what this whole Arkansas, Kansas, Tennessee thing is based on, is that you don't hear shit about trans women. You hear everything. Yeah, sorry. You hear everything about and then hearing the explanation as to why that focus is what it is, and comes back to just this idea of men being so self-conscious and worried, and that like this weird power struggle that happens between, just some of those things are just so pure, and they can't. Doug and I couldn't get to those questions.
The patriarchy is the problem. Let's be very clear. So we must dismantle it.
Y'all's always are. It's just how it is.
Can we just dismantle it and then just move on? Let's dismantle the patriarchy. I'm here for this. I don't give a fuck. Let's get rid of all my power that I have.
Dismantle it, and then we're gonna have Ellen bunny hop it.
That sounds fantastic. Yes, let's do that. That's good. We could probably set this up. This is a good YouTube video, which probably gets slagged off on Instagram because some kids like, I could do that when I was 12, as it always happens on Instagram.
But Dan from Grimpa Brothers will still sponsor it. It'll be amazing.
No, for perfect. This is great. This is how it is. Oh, Instagram,
that's how we'll roast the beans for that week, is we'll set the patriarchy on fire. And then we'll roast that week's beans on the patriarchy. Yeah, and then Ellen can jump over the whole thing. That's awesome. I love it.
Ellen Bunny Hop Blend.
Red Bull.
TM, oh my god. Oh my god, if I just showed you this amazing kit that just like, oh my god, I'm just going to show you this. I'm going to world premiere something here.
All right.
That like my team just sent me. Look at this, is how much they care about me. And if Elizabeth Toby, you're watching this, oh, I messed it up already. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this kit. Can you see it? It's like, you can't see it. It's like
rotating.
It's a trans inclusive kit.
Is it trans CX?
It's a Cruise CX kit. Like my cyclocross team, they sent over like a kit, and it's all like trans colored, and it's amazing. Oh,
it doesn't show well on the camera, but
it doesn't. Just trust me that it's amazing. I don't know how to do it on a thing, but yeah, that was amazing. I probably should have showed you that, but that was amazing. And I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I just showed you that kit.
World premiere right here.
I approve this, Elizabeth. It looks great.
We'll send her a DM. Well, Tara, this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you for spending time. Like as always, so awesome to spend time with you. And wonderful to have you back on the show. Circumstances of the specifics of the timing suck, but you know what? I appreciate you giving your perspective and your input. This is so important for folks who may not have approached this, and I'm really glad that that you are here in this moment to help guide people who need a little bit of that sort of guidance at this time. So thank you.
Thank you all for having me. And at the same time, I'm also going to say, now that like I'm fully vaxxed up here, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be able to go ride bikes places. And I know that you've got the vax, I've got the vax, and I've got some gravel bikes and stuff I got to test. Maybe I should like road trip out to like,
yeah, we got a lot of gravel.
Something.
We got a lot of gravel.
Yeah, we've got places.
See, so we should talk. So anyway,
okay.
All right. Hey, thanks y'all. Bye everybody. Anybody who hung on for this, like, should get like should get a merit badge right now. Like, a TGL
merit badges.
TGL, like, you hung on till the end, like, merit badge.
So everybody, all the pebbles, that's all for this week. Thank you so much for hanging with us and spending time with us and our friend Tara. We really appreciate y'all being here. And make sure to follow, subscribe, and engage, because as you know, decisions and trails are made by those who show up. So if we don't see you next week, wait, if we don't see you on the trails, we'll see you next time. Bye, John.
Bye, Doug.
Thank you.